It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out, and today's guest is New York family lawyer slash divorce attorney, Dennis Vetrano. Let me look and see if he's on here. So just accept it, and then we're on. Oh, such a relief.
Oh,
oh
come
no!
on. Come on, I'm getting better at this.
I know, I
Instagram
know
Live is
people
my thing, you know that?
You TikTokers, it's always like, wait, what do I do? Like a minute before we go on Instagram.
You know what the problem is? Like, I'm not tech savvy. So that, like I'm a coach for a travel team, right? And one of my assistant coaches has to like navigate through the got sport for me because he's a tech guy and I'm not a tech guy. So,
yeah,
but listen, I have lighting today. I have a new tripod. I have a new mount for my phone. So it looks a little different, but hopefully it looks a little better. So how are you?
Good. I was going to say, you just opened up a conversation about playing sports, and we have to apologize to everybody because you were supposed to be on with me like a few weeks ago, and you couldn't because of sports, because you went in your work shoes and injured yourself. And I bet people were thinking I was kidding, but you can say on the record that you actually hurt yourself.
Now listen, I'm 51 years old, and yes, I still play competitive soccer, but when you try to play against like semi-pro players and college players and stuff, sometimes it's a little bit, it takes a little bit of a toll on the body. So first it was the ankle, then it was the knee, and when you get injuries like that, they travel up. So then it traveled up to a back spasm, and I don't get back spasms often, but when I get them, they're debilitating. Like I can't get off the couch. That's the way it is. So.
Yep.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So hopefully,
no, it's okay. You're forgiven. You're here now.
I still play soccer. That it seems like the story sounds credible.
No, you're here now. So, so Dennis, we've been out together a few times, and one thing we have in common is we're both New Yorkers. We're both fast talkers, and we went to the same college, SUNY Albany.
Yeah.
So we're both famous for the New York reality check, straight talker.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Okay, so for the people,
I tell people things they need to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear. And a lot of times on my TikTok, people will say, "Oh, I don't like this," blah blah. What I'm just telling you what I see. Don't get mad at me. If I see something, I'm going to tell you what I'm seeing, and so hopefully that helps you.
Yeah, good. Yep, we feel the same way. I mean, sometimes people want to hear it. It's like, but it shouldn't be that way, but it is. So let's figure out how to deal with it. Okay, so Dennis, formally introduce yourself for those who don't already know you.
I'm a New York State divorce attorney. I've been practicing going on 23 years now. I started out prosecuting, I started out in private practice handling a whole host of things because I gravitated towards family law. A lot of people came in and started hiring me for that, so I moved in that area of law. I started representing children as attorney for children, prosecuted child abuse and neglect for a handful of years, represented children again, assigned counsel, representing litigants in family court for years, and now mostly divorce litigation, also divorce mediator. And now I'm just, I spend more time now, as you know, just trying to spread the word of like what I'm seeing, try to educate people outside my office, try to, give them some tools they can reach out to if they're going through the process so that they're not trying to spend it all that time in my office and getting charged hourly for it. Try to do as much outside the office as you can, and just taking my knowledge and trying to help people.
Yes. Okay. So we have the same goal. So now you mentioned a lot of experience with children and advocating for children. You're an attorney for the child. So let's talk about stuff with kids, because we know that's a huge concern with our shared clients, is like, what's going to happen to the kids if we separate? And so one thing that we know is that people often stay together for the sake of the kids, but that can be harmful even when it's not physical abuse. So in your experience, can you talk about the effects of kids when they're in a household, not necessarily where there's domestic abuse, but where people are just unhappy?
Right. You've got to remember, with kids, children are sponges. You think I've got the door closed. You think I went upstairs. You think you're just having a private conversation. These kids hear all these things, and they're very perceptive. So even if you're not saying it specifically, they can see it. They can feel it. They know it's happening. And what happens is they think it's me. They internalize it's me. So even more so than, in my opinion, than the divorce process itself, when you're in a situation where you have I don't want to say toxic relationship, but if you have a relationship where there's a lot of acrimony, the kids start blaming themselves. They start internalizing it. They start self-evaluating what they're doing. It's a lot of stress and a lot of angst for kids. So it's funny because I've been handling these sorts of cases, like I said, for over 2 decades. And it's only up until recently that people are starting to publicize or sort of put it out there that it's more damaging for kids to be around an acrimonious, failed relationship than it is for them to be out of it and be in a separate, healthy household. Because if you're just not getting along and you're fighting too much, just too much on the kids, too much stress, too much angst.
Yeah. What are some common behaviors you've seen with kids, like when this happens? And of course, it's such a wide range, like little kids, tweens, teens, even
for
adult
sure.
children.
I mean, you're going to see lack of attention. You're going to see acting out. You're going to see not doing as well in school. You're going to see like the children being more aggressive than they ever were with their playmates or their friends, or those sorts of things. But it's not like, I feel like with kids, you can't just say, just like with any other situation, you can't just say, here's that one thing that they're going to do, and if you see that, there's the problem right there. It's a whole host of different things. I mean, you have to know your kid, right? The starting point is know your kid. Know what their typical behaviors are. Know what their MO. Know, are they a happy kid? Are they typically like reticent and reserved, or like are they usually like out all into everything? And if you see marked changes, that's the time to get somebody involved. And I think, again, it starts with observation. It starts with being in tune with your kid, and then be proactive. I mean, it's amazing, like how many problems we can see and we know it's happening, but either we don't know what steps to take, or we're a little concerned or nervous or second guessing making the decisions you really should make. So like if you're in a domestic violence situation, you should be getting somebody to help. You should try to get support. Try to reach out and get a domestic violence counselor. Have your own counselor. Or if you're going through the divorce process and it's stressful, you should have a counselor you're working with. You should have a divorce coach. So even more importantly with kids, like if you see something's happening, start getting some services for them. Start seriously considering having them work with a counselor, even if for no other reason than just to have somebody independent to talk to.
Yeah.
And also stay in tune with all the other people in their lives. So talk with the soccer coach. Are you seeing anything? Talk with the teacher. Are you seeing anything? Talk with the pediatrician. Are you seeing anything? Is there anything so even I went to school the other day with my kid, and we had our school meeting, right? But I want to talk to the teacher one-on-one to just say, hey, I'm his father. Are you seeing anything? This is what we saw last year with his education and with his behavior. Are you seeing anything different? Do you have any suggestions? So it's kind of important to really be engaged in your kids' lives.
Yeah, and I'm thinking too, people are always preparing documentation, of course. So so say they're still in the relationship, they know they're going to leave, and they see effects on their kids. Another thing I'm thinking of is regression. Where older kids start peeing in bed or doing things like when they were really, that's what you see too. So how do people, what are the things that actually matter in terms of visible indicators if someone's like, I'm worried about the effects on my kid of what's going on in the household? What things should they really pay attention to?
Well, keep in mind with that, you have to be cautious about that. You want to keep a record of observations, right? Just like, we had a conversation some time ago about the labels of narcissists or this or that. You want to keep a record of what you're observing. Just your observations. You're not an expert. You're not going to walk in and say, this is a this is a that. You can't. You're not trained to do that. And even if you were trained, they'd consider you biased anyhow if you're in it, if you're a party to it. So what you really want to do is just memorialize marked changes. I think I think as lay people, we're a little bit too much trying to anticipate what an expert would think is important and try to write those things down rather than just get a baseline and mark down changes. Yeah. And be surprised over time how you can see that line, and if it's something substantive. And that's when you bring those observations to the professional. That's not something for you to do and say, hey, there it is. This is depression. Hey, there it is. This is a narcissist. That's not your job. Your biggest value is to be the person that observes, and you keep a record of everything.
So you made me just think of something. So when I know with a lot of people that we talk to, they say, this is happening to my kid and it's because of the other person. Do you see that a lot too?
Yeah.
That was a rhetorical question.
Yeah. Yeah, well, right. I mean, and here's the thing. You're going to say, well, every time I drop the child off at mom's house, when he comes back, you know, he's completely off the hook. He's completely everywhere in 50 different directions. Now, I will tell you, my kids spend time with their grandparents on the weekends. And I will say that I see when my kids come back, they're a little bit more excited, a little bit wilder, a little bit like, you know, grandparents kind of let them slide a little bit. But what conclusions do you really draw from that? And can you say it's specifically attributable to the time that they spend with that person? Not necessarily. I mean, that's really, again, I put that to somebody, you know, because I will tell you, let's put it this way. In some ways, I'm giving you information based on what I see as a lawyer and what I've brought before judges and what their conclusions are. On average, they're going to say, well, how do we know that that's attributable to?
Well, that's what I wanted you to say. That's what I wanted you to say. Right. It's like, it's very hard to make a direct connection because, again, you can't draw conclusions for other people.
Right. And here's the thing. Keep in mind what you're trying to do there is come to a conclusion that really should be left to somebody that does this for a living. So, you know, if it's a mental health diagnosis, am I going to try, even as the lawyer, am I going to try, oh, I see all the observations, here it is, that's what it is. Not really. And you can't even really prove the cause and effect necessarily, but it doesn't mean you don't keep notes on it. It doesn't mean you don't use your observations and keep a notebook. It just means that when you get that notebook, you're really not in the position to come to a conclusion based on it, but you can provide it to a counselor to be able to work through it.
Yeah, and that's really hard for so many of us where it's like, can't you see? Like, can't you see what I'm presenting? But part of the etiquette or the ethos of court is we say you cannot tell a judge what to think.
Right.
Because that's disrespectful. So then you'll end up looking bad.
Right. And in a way, think of it like this. I mean, the way it's framed is like, look, here's what I'm seeing. So if I have a case where, again, you're arguing that somebody's a narcissist and they're doing X and Y and Z, my job would be call the client, have them testify to the specific things. You're there to give as much information as you can to the judge. That's your job. You have to look at it like you're there. So somebody used to describe witness testimony as you're just having a conversation in the presence of the judge. Yes, you're having a conversation about what you've observed, what you've seen in the case. You're not trying to tell the judge what to do. You're trying to say, here's what I'm seeing, judge. And then the judge, ultimately, it's within their purview to arrive at the ultimate determination. But if you take that information and then it's provided to a counselor, then they fill in that last piece. So you say, here are all the things I'm seeing, here are all the behaviors. And then the judge's ears are already kind of up saying, this looks a little fishy. And then the counselor comes on or the evaluator comes on and says, yes, and these behaviors, as memorialized by the testimony by mom or dad or whomever, causes me to arrive at this particular diagnosis. And then that's how you get to that end, you know, if you get there at all, and even to the extent that's relevant. But I think the most important thing is what you're seeing, what you're observing, and keep a record of it. And you'd be surprised how far that will go with a judge. Just not trying to be the self-proclaimed expert, but to say, this is what I saw, judge. This is what happens.
Right. And that goes back to what we always talk about, patterns of behavior over time, whether it's in your child, the other person, but just here's what I see. What do you think?
Right. Right. And
agree.
And you'd be surprised when you do that, how quickly and easily the judges arrive at the decisions that they should arrive at. Not always, again, because being in family
don't
courts,
say the word quickly. Don't say the word quickly.
Listen, I will tell you, I had a case just recently that we just kind of revisited, and what transpired in that case is absolutely atrocious. I mean, what happens in family court is, I want to call it a shit pile. Excuse my French, but that's okay. That's one of my favorite phrases. It's just not good. It's just not good. It's not the way it should be, not the way it's supposed to be.
I know, but we have to deal with it.
We do.
Here we are trying to figure out how to deal with it.
We do.
Okay,
and think of the position that I'm in, because I have clients now. Now we know everything we do based on our experience, our knowledge, is prepared to the nth degree. But imagine how frustrating it is for a lawyer's perspective, even as much or more than the litigant, as you work so hard to prepare a case in the way that it's supposed to be, exceed all expectations in the level of preparation of putting a case together, and have the judge say, no, I'm not doing that, because that's not what I do in these cases. Nothing to do with the
you
law,
get
nothing
blamed.
to do with the facts, nothing to do with the preparation. That's just not what I just believe X and Y and Z should happen in every case.
Yep. I know.
And then you got to answer the client and say, I charge you
You're
X
the fall
amount of
guy.
dollars for the judge to tell you that garbage.
I know. Yes, yes. Yeah. Okay, so another thing with the kids is that I've noticed you've done a bunch of posts on this, maybe not this particular one, is that people are dealing with such high emotions, and some people tend to lean on their children as their confidants.
Ooh, yeah.
What have you witnessed with that, and how common is that?
Well, and remember, I used to prosecute child abuse and neglect and represent kids in neglectful situations. So I would have situations where the parent would be explaining to the child why they can't afford their rent and why they don't have food, and talking about their drug use, and like, it's like, oh my God. So yeah, you've got to do everything you can to shield your children from the process. All of your stress, all of your angst, you have to do your level best to keep them shielded from it. And again, I think in many ways, it helps to have a counselor to guide you through that process, because your kid should never be your confidant. In fact, your kid should be shielded from every aspect of it. So I did a piece just recently on TikTok about whether or not your new boyfriend or girlfriend should be coming to the ball games.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Listen, I know it's your new boyfriend, it's your new girlfriend. I know you move on in life and this and that. I get it, believe me. But you've got to think of your kid first. And I remember, listen, I played sports my whole life, and I remember being at my ball game, you know, hitting a double and getting on second base and seeing my parents in the stands and how important that was to me. But again, remember, kids internalize things. Do you want your kid to be rounding the bases and to get on second base and be looking in the stands and thinking to himself, oh my God, mommy's arguing with daddy's new girlfriend, or they might argue, or why is that person here? Or that makes me feel uncomfortable. You don't want that to cross a child's mind ever with any of these circumstances. And it's not perfect. You can't keep everything away from them. But the things you have control over, you've got to shield them from.
Okay, so speaking of that, often our clients say, it's not me, it's the other side that's telling the kids all this stuff. And the kids feel really guilty. And the other side is saying that, you know, they can't afford this, or they pay this much in support, or they're lonely. Since it, like, how do you handle that? Because you can't control. And we know that even though almost every agreement says that one parent should not talk disparagingly against the other parent, and that you shouldn't involve the kids and blah, 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 that's unenforceable, right? Because we have people coming to us too that say, that person's talking badly about me and I'm going to go back to court and it's parental alienation. We're just like, it's not going to fly.
Yeah, those are difficult cases. And you have to be cautious as a lawyer, especially, how much you reel your clients into these sorts of things. Because technically, you could enforce it, right? If you could prove it. But it's just so incredibly difficult. And even to the extent that you carry the day on that, you've got to think of it in two ways. How much time and money and aggravation does it cost you? And when you get there, what's the judge really gonna do? If the judge finds that they're talking badly about the other parent, is the judge going to use that as a basis to take their visitation away? I mean, are they going to feel like on the spectrum of things that they see, that that's significant enough to take time away from the other parent, or, you know, or to sanction them in some other way? That's, again, you got to remember, at the end of the day, what do you get? It's not just, is it significant to you? Okay, because it might not be as significant to the court as it is to you. Can you prove it? And then even if you can prove it, what does the judge do with that?
What do you see, Dennis? What do you see? How often do you see anything actually happen with that? Because we haven't heard much happen that's good for people.
I mean, with these cases, I will tell you, on average, the judges don't, they really, I find that depending upon what county you're in, It's going to vary, but they're less and less inclined to do anything with those cases. And even if they do, it just drags out and drags out and drags out and drags out. The case I was just mentioning a couple of minutes ago, it's a case that dragged out for closing in on almost 2 years. And the judge taking completely ridiculous positions, ordering forensics in a situation absolutely not necessary, just ordering multiple days of deposition. And what does that mean for the client? That means
Right.
money and time and aggravation. And then at the end of the day, do you really get enough of a result to make up for all that? It's a shitty situation. I'm sorry, but I'm just being honest.
Yeah. Well, no, it's good to hear. All right. So speaking of that, I think there's this myth that both parents are going to do what's best for the kids. And our people in these, ours are, when I say ours, like the people in the high conflict situation, their friends and family are going, well, why doesn't the other person just do this for the kids? Like,
Yep.
How do you explain to people, or is it even worth explaining?
I think that's one of the most difficult things you'll do, is because I tell them, I said, look, the other parent is not going to be you. You might be the parent that goes to school and goes to the ball games and spends time with them and is preserving their mental health and doing everything you can to have the best life they can have. Doesn't necessarily mean the other side's going to do that. But that also doesn't necessarily mean that the court's going to give them less time or less involvement because of it.
There's the reality check.
Right.
Right.
Because what's going to happen is they're going to say, they're the dad, you're the mom, you're going to be mom, they're going to be dad, they're going to live the way they want to live, you're going to live the way you want to live and raise your kids the way you want to. That's the difficulty of a split family, is that you're each going to live your life the way that you want to. Now, the ideal situation is that the two parents have a meeting of the minds over the core issues on how they're going to address them. But that's not, the court can't enforce that. That's not necessary. That won't happen in most cases.
I was going to say,
and you just need to understand that. I think it's just a matter of a level of acceptance, is that that's what it is, and you need to deal with it.
So we might have talked about this in the past, but there's things that, let's say, what are some of the common things that people come to you and say, like, this is such a big deal, I'm going to go back, because they're breaking the agreement, when you already know that doesn't count, this doesn't matter, this doesn't matter. I'm thinking showing up 10 minutes late to drop-offs.
Well, that's a perfect example. And you have to determine. So they're showing up late again and again and again and again. And the time frame is, say, 15 minutes. They show up 20. They show up 30. What is the court going to do with that? Is the court going to say, because they were 15 minutes later, that now you don't have visitation with your kid? Because remember, the court's got to counterbalance, like, the violation with what the ultimate punishment or implication should be. And which is worse? Is it worse that you wait in the car an extra 15 minutes, the court is going to think? Or is it worse that they don't see their mom or they don't see their dad?
Okay, so at what point does it start to become like that really matters?
Oh, well, that's absolutely within the discretion of the judge. And it depends which judge you get, and it depends which day, and it depends, whether the sky is blue. I mean, I feel like the standard in this area of best interest of the child is so wide open. It leaves it to so much discretion. And I think, again, you couple that with the difficulty of being able to prove these things. You couple that with how many cases these judges have. You couple that with judges being elected who were never family lawyers, were never divorce lawyers. They did criminal defense, or they were an ADA their whole life, and now they're presiding over a contentious, divorce or family court case. I mean, I have judges who make blatant mistakes, and you'll say, well, judge, you can't, under the law, you can't do that. Well, I don't care, I'm doing it anyhow. And then what?
And there's nothing you can do. So here's another one with that, where people say the judge didn't rule it right, and I'm going to report them. I won't say what I've read, but how often have you seen a judge removed or even disciplined?
In my career, without something like really, really egregious, never, pretty much. Never.
That's what I've read.
Let's put it
too.
this way.
Like 1 in 10 years.
I've encountered some of the most horrific decisions and absolutely piss poor judging of cases, and I've never filed a complaint against a judge. because I know it's 99% chance it'll simply get dismissed. And now I've got the eye of the judge. And by the way, once the judge knows you've done that, they talk to every other judge.
All right.
So now I've got one client that didn't quite go the way they wanted it to go, and I'm complaining about the judge. And now the 200 to 250 other clients will suffer because of that one complaint. So it's unfortunate, but the system needs to fix the system. And the system has no interest in fixing the system based on self-preservation alone. So
with that, so we know judges are untouchable, but another thing that comes up, and I know I felt the same way, but haven't done anything about it because I realize now it's pointless, is people saying that my ex's attorney is so bad. They broke the code of ethics, so I'm going to complain about them. How often do you see that go anywhere either?
I've never really seen that go very far. I mean, you know, the times that I've seen a lawyer disciplined or suspended or disbarred was when they, I can think of two. One, the lawyer was sneaking marijuana into the prison or into the jail to his client and was having sex with his client. The other one is when the lawyer was stealing from his own escrow account and paying his bills with it. So, I mean, those are like really extreme examples.
And not related to like someone, like a client's complaint.
No, because you got to remember the bare minimum of representation of your client isn't really very hard to me, isn't very hard to prove, you know. So again, and we had a conversation with a colleague of mine the other day, and this is what's so troubling to me, is the way lawyers are taught to practice law is just a train wreck. It's an absolute train wreck. Because a lot of lawyers, and I don't know if anybody out there has had this experience, a lot of lawyers think the way you practice law is you get hired by your client, you do nothing until the court appearance, and then a day before, 2 days before, 15 minutes before, you frantically call your client and see if you can get the case settled. That's not what the practice of law is about. The practice of law is about the preparation between the first client meeting until you get to the courthouse. There's so much that should have taken place from the day you met your client until the day you get to the courthouse. And
it's like event planning, any event. It's all the preparation. And then the big day is smooth if the preparation's been great, right?
Right.
Otherwise it's a disaster.
Right. And it's funny because you get these lawyers say, oh, look at how little I charged my client. Yeah, because you did no effing work. Like I get it, but you know, if it's something that's really simple and you can get it done quickly, absolutely. And I'm a big proponent of getting people out of my office for venting or emotional support or questions they can get answered outside or gathering information. I'm big on send a letter, do your homework outside the office so you're not doing it with me at X amount of dollars an hour. But there's got to be preparation. You've got to know what happens at the end of your case, okay? So that you can prepare all the way up through that. And you'll find that if you front load your preparation, even before you even set foot in a lawyer's office, by keeping a notebook on what's happening in your life, what's happening in your case, just like we were talking about behaviors with the kids and getting baselines, et cetera, and observations and dates and times and descriptions, do all that stuff outside the office. Don't do that in the lawyer's office. Do all that prep. Then when the lawyer gets it, they prepare your documents well. And now the court's got an entire history of your case from day one. And then prepare like that case may go to trial, because guess what? They might. And if you prepare for a trial, your likelihood of a favorable settlement is much, much, much better.
Yep, I'm so glad you said that. So in real life, I am in this networking group, and there's a family attorney. This is Connecticut, so not a competitor with you. Don't worry.
Yeah,
but anyway, I asked him, I said, you know, and our clients all know this, we say we want our clients to be the teacher's pet of clients. What would be an awesome client for you? And he said, I love clients that are the opposite of me, which means they are really, really organized. I like when they come in with spreadsheets, charts, information, so that I don't have to do all that. So I said, that's what we do. We help them get their targeted documentation as well as know what to expect in court. Like we talk about presentation. That's not your job, right? I mean, some lawyers do it, but it's not your job to get them ready to be a great witness, to expect all the bullying that's going to come their way and how they're going to be called an unfit parent and an addict and everything else, but to be ready and to be able to address it calmly so that you don't have to do that. And all you do is take the information, not thousands and thousands of pages of it, and you just translate it into the law. So they get that support elsewhere. So that's what Chris and I do.
Oh, I will tell you, I love when I have hotheads on the other side of my cases. I love when I have the really aggressive people on the other side of the case, because I know how I'll just call them as a witness and just push buttons. And then people see their true colors really quickly. That's But again, I think on the flip side of that, keep your emotions under control. I mean, and I think, you know, so I was talking about this situation the other day. So occasionally when we have our more complex trials, I'll have one of my paralegals come to the trial with me or come to the deposition with us. And it's for a few different reasons, not only to mark exhibits and go through the documents and keep everything organized and take notes while I'm trying to observe, you know, what the witness is doing during testimony, but also just to keep my client calm, just to be that like, hey, like put your hand on their arm and just say, bring it down, because you can't help the emotions that come out. You know, I remember a trial that I had, client just burst out, was like standing up and was pointing and then just started crying in the middle of the trial. We're like, what are you crying about? She's like, this is the first time anybody's ever seen what he's really like. But you can't let the judge know that you're having emotions about it. Isn't that odd? Isn't that strange? I find that so funny. The judge is going to scold you for being emotional about a situation. That's your effing life. But that's the reality. So, you know. Yep, definitely.
You know, when you said that, I was thinking you answered a question that I never thought of asking, because my case in Connecticut, I'm pro se in Connecticut. Well, I'm pro se in general, but the last hearing, they did bring, his lawyer brought a paralegal or somebody, and I was like, what is that person doing here? And I got worried.
Yeah.
I thought they're both going to get up and go after me. They didn't, but that's interesting. They're there to calm the client down. Well, no wonder.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, in part, because you got to think of it. If you've done a lot of trials, you know and understand how important what the judge is seeing, what you're seeing, and body language is with a witness and testimony. Okay. But you can't focus on that. Especially if it's a complex case, focus on that, take notes, keep your client under wraps. Like, you can't possibly do all of that at once. Not well, at least. So for me, when I know I have those cases, I'm going to have, and our system is set up so that we have a paralegal attorney. So 9 times out of 10, well, not 9 times, 100% of the time, they have an intimate relationship with the client already, because they've been the person to reach out to answer questions, not legal questions. The legal questions are always past the lawyer, but gather information, etc. So they know that person very well. So now when they see them at trial, it's kind of almost like their friend there to kind of help calm them down. Now, you know, but again, those situations can get expensive. So a lot of times in those circumstances, I say, and I did that in a recent post, I don't know if you saw, I said, look, I'm not here to be your emotional support. I just want to be your lawyer. So
I saw that.
Really use your coaches, use your counselors. Believe me, it's a much lower hourly rate to be able to have somebody who's been intimately involved with it, knows their craft, and can kind of keep you moving in the right direction. And then let the lawyer do the lawyer stuff. Yeah,
love it. Okay, so another thing is we had talked about what it's like to co-parent with a, I'll say, difficult person, acrimonious person. And there's a woman, her name is Marit, and she does this, a lot of stuff with blended families. With her thing is called Blended Family Frappe. And she said that a lot of people think that the default in divorce is amicable co-parenting. Now, do you see that? Because she's like, she said it's not. But do you think that when people generally settle down, that things become more amicable? Or do you think that certain people's cases, when they're dealing with certain types of people, that it just stays difficult forever?
Well, let me say this. The people that tend to need family court to begin with, or have a litigated divorce that pends for a while to begin with, tend to be those cases that you get that are perennial cases, right? Every 6 months, every year, every 2 years, there's something new. Let's start with that. But I think, you know, I think in these circumstances, if, how do I frame this? If you want to work through it with the other side, you can. But I think in these sorts of circumstances, you will see many cases just penned for years and years with a back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah. So the answer is no, it's not always amicable.
No, it's not always amicable. And I think there's so many varying degrees of that.
Yeah.
So, you know, we get things that really run the gamut. But again, we get the cases that pen for years, and we also get those cases where they're worked out pretty reasonably. But I think your indicators are usually like, look, if they start out with divorce mediation, if they start out with not needing a judge involved, if they start out with, okay, maybe you got a judge involved, but it resolved pretty quickly, amicably, those are the cases that you tend to not see again and again. But I think with the cases that become contentious and drag out over years, I think in those cases, a lot, the dynamic is usually one person trying to bully the other person, and like they're just seeing how far they can push, and they keep pushing back. So we have cases, I even have a handful of cases right now. I'm explaining to a client, I said, look, this person is trying to bully you into things that you know are not fair and contrary to my advice. If that's what you want to agree to, that's fine. But I'm telling you, the more you acquiesce, the more you give in, the more you let them have their way, even if it's ridiculous, you're taking this proverbial problem and creating a monster. It gets worse and worse and worse and worse the more you give in. At some point, you need to dig your heels in and say, no, I'm not doing that. And the moment that you stand up to that and stop that, and I can give you a list of cases that this has happened in, the moment you go, and one of the cases needed a trial on both ends. But once he did that, he hasn't been in court in 10 years. Before that, he was in court every year, every 6 months.
It makes me think of disciplining a child, where if you have a child who has no discipline and you keep letting things go, they turn into this crazy monster.
Right. Well, think of it like this. You remember, everybody remembers when they were a kid in school, right? And you'd have that bully, and that bully, every time you walk by him, was going to punch in the arm, right? He's going to punch in the arm. He's going to punch in the arm. So not that you want to physically assault somebody. It's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is, in the appropriate channels, you need to stand up to that and you need to stop it. You need to not allow it to continue, not, you know, just say that's okay and let them keep doing it to you. So obviously in that situation, you want to talk to a teacher, talk to an adult and try to sort those things out. But it wouldn't be just allow them to continue to do it, is my point. I had a conversation with the guy who's actually going to be on my podcast soon, Matt Pfeiffer. I don't know if you.
Oh yeah, we were just on together a few times.
Yeah. So we were talking about like dealing with narcissists. That's going to be the subject matter, and gray rocking. And he said, I don't tell people to gray rock. He says, I tell them to be a gray mountain.
Oh yes, we talked about that.
And no matter what the weather, that mountain doesn't change. You don't seek out the conflict. You don't try to encourage it, but you don't let them push you past that gray mountain, right? It can rain, it can thunder, it can storm. Let the other side do all the stuff they want to do, but you don't change. You stay exactly where you are. Stay static. You don't let people push you around, which I think is brilliant. I love it. It is.
Great idea. Very hard to put in practice. Yes. Great idea. That's why you need support to keep the mountain from all the rocks falling apart.
Right. Well, that's what he said. He said it's not easy to do. It's difficult to do. But listen, I'm not going to, you know, a lot of these situations are not easy. If they were easy, you know, they'd all be sorted out. We'd have no problem, right? But they're hard to deal with. And that's why, you know, you have the proverbial, as you said before, the wave of professionals to help. So.
Yeah. Okay. So then the last thing I want to ask before, you know, unless there's anything else you want to say is, in one of our prior conversation, we were talking about how hard it is to co-parent with a toxic person. You said the reality is you have no alternative and you can't just check out. So tell us more about that. How do you deal with it? Any more tips on how do you deal with this person who is so hard? And when you have these kids, you can't just get away.
I have to be honest with you. That analogy that Matt shared, the gray mountain, it's absolutely it. So the things that you know you need to, because look, if you're going to allow them to bully you into whatever they want, Even if you give them everything they want, they're just going to keep asking for more. It's never going to end. You know, a lot of times people think, well, if I give them this, then they'll be happy. And then if I give them this, it's always going to be something, because it's not about getting the thing for them. It's about pushing you around and getting over it. It's about bullying you. And it will always be something new. So the point is, at some point, you just got to dig in. Now, they send you a nasty text. Oh, you're a terrible mother, or you're terrible with expenses like you always were. And you're always, you know, you're shacking up with this guy or this. They're going to send you these things to get you going.
Right. It's their entertainment.
Right. It feeds their whole life. That's what their life is about. So what you need to do is first determine, are these things that you really need to take any action on? Do you need to respond at all? And if you don't, you don't. If you're required to respond, you cut the emotions out and respond only, you know, even keel, only the things you need to respond to, only with information. But you also document and keep track of all of your information to the extent you would ever need to go to court about it, right? And you try to do as many things as you can in writing. You try to have counselors involved and support involved as much as you can. But you need to be the mountain, because the alternative is you're going to allow your kid to suffer because they are a bully or they are toxic. And it's not just about you. I think sometimes people lose sight of that. They think it's about them. It's maybe more about their kid than it is about them. If you allow that other side to bully you, your kid suffers.
Someone just asked, how about if it's affecting the child, which is a huge question.
If it's affecting the child, I think the best thing you can do, look, it's so difficult when children are impacted by things, because we were having a conversation the other day and I said to somebody, look, we were interviewing a new lawyer for our office. And she said she worked with child clients. I said, working with child clients is so much more difficult than working with adult clients, because you just don't, you know, sometimes kids make stuff up. Sometimes they want to talk about, you know, their dinosaur, and they don't want to talk about what's happening in their home. Sometimes they'll say somebody did something to me and they don't really mean that person. They're actually grafting it from another person. It's so complex to work with children. You really need experts to do that. And when you have a family court case, you know, you can walk in and say, well, my kid told me this, my kid told me that, blah, blah, blah. You know, to the extent that it's admissible as evidence, number one. Then number two, how much is the judge going to take that into account? But if the child is involved with a counselor, and or there's a properly done, and I'm loath to do forensics. I don't know if you know that. I don't like forensics at all, because most of them I think are a huge waste of money and garbage. But if they're absolutely necessary and you get one done well, that and or counselor can really help communicate what the child is seeing through their eyes to the judge in your case. The other piece you can try is do what we call a Lincoln hearing or an in-camera. Have the judge talk to the child or children directly. And there's a way to be involved in that process. It's funny because in the interview I had with an attorney the other day, they didn't realize that with Lincoln hearings or in-cameras, you can propose questions for the judge to ask your kid in the presence of the attorney.
Yes. One of our clients in Pennsylvania did that.
Don't realize that.
Yes. And we came up with like smart questions to ask.
And it's not necessarily, and you got to watch, because judges have huge egos typically. You don't have to tell me how to interview a child. I've been doing that 10 years ago. Meanwhile, I have the slightest clue. You know, no child psychology background, no psychology background, no divorce law trainings, nothing. And yet they know better than you do. Nevertheless, if you give them a list of questions, the law guardian or the attorney for the judge does not have to ask those questions. They can simply take your sheet or ignore it. But think of it like this. If they put their eyes across it, you're cueing them in to the issues that are important in the case. And even if they don't ask your specific questions, and even if they just say they're ignoring your questions, now in their head, as they go into that interview, they know what's important in the case. They know what you think is relevant. They know what may be an issue. Maybe it's not, but maybe it's an issue. So if they were just going to ask about school and ask about how's your time with mom and ask your time, how's the time with dad, now they know, well, you know, pick up and drop off, or speaking poorly about the other parent, or is the other parent coaching them? You know, a lot of times you'll ask a question like, did mom tell you anything that I should tell the judge? Or did mom tell you anything that you should say to the judge? You'd be surprised when you ask that question, how some kids will say, oh yeah, mom said to say, but Well, you're
Really?
not supposed to, yeah. You're not supposed to be telling the child what they're supposed to tell the law guardian or the judge or. So again, I think with these sorts of circumstances, it can be really difficult, but I think you can keep notes, you can, make copies of records, you can be in tune with your child, you can get professionals involved, and as an additional piece of that, you can also, consider asking the judge to speak with your child directly.
And you call that a Lincoln hearing?
We call it a Lincoln hearing. It used to be called an in-camera. I remember doing it in a case where my client said to me, Dennis, I don't care what that law guardian says. She's full of shit. My clients do not want that. They want something different. And I said, okay, why don't we do a Lincoln hearing? Do a Lincoln hearing, give the proposed questions. And sure enough, the law guardian was not representing what the client wanted strongly enough. Okay?
That's valuable. That's a valuable tidbit.
What was not representing what the kids really wanted, at least well enough, and that carried the day in that case. So now, fast forward, this was a situation where they didn't want to allow mom to have any contact. Dad and new stepmom were bullying mom, had everybody hoodwinked. Now, fast forward several years, kids are with mom. Dad doesn't want anything to do with them, because he really didn't from the start. He really just wanted to get over on mom. That was the point. And when he was getting over, everything was great. Then when he wasn't getting over and they had to share and be two responsible parents, then he wanted to tap out. He didn't want to be involved. So, kids lose, but then again, in that sort of circumstance, everything ended up the way it was supposed to end up.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, we always say nobody wins.
No. And I think, again, you've got to remember with these cases, and I think a lot of times, not just the litigants, but even the lawyers and the judges too, they lose sight of you're supposed to view these cases through the children's eyes. I don't know how else you could view these cases. Do parents automatically, by virtue of the fact that they're a biological parent, all things being equal, bring a value to the children's lives? Of course they do, all things being equal. But I think you got to, keep in mind, like a judge said something where, dad wasn't doing the right thing, had filthy house, the kids didn't want to be there, kids weren't happy, and the judge comes up with well, the kids just need to help dad more. Are you dad? You're looking at this case through dad's eyes. Stop. You're looking at it through the wrong eyes. You look at it through the kids' eyes. How do the kids feel? If you were a 15-year-old, you were an 18-year-old, and you're going, or 18, age out, but if you're 15, you're 13, and you're going to a situation that is not good for you, and you're not happy, judges need to take a closer look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great advice. Wish it would have more, but that's great. All right, Dennis, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say, but this has been awesome as ever.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
So thank you again.
I'm sorry about missing the last time. Like I said,
it's fine. We threw something together.
My back's better now, so it was ankle first. Ankle's better. The sore patella's a little bit better. Kneecap and back's better. So we'll talk again.
Good.
We'll talk again soon.
Right.
Sure.
Good. All right. We'll talk to you later, Dennis. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Bye.